Hello, everybody. And hello from my little friend who decided she wanted petting right before I was ready to start. Well, I guess first of all, let me know if you can see and hear me. It seems like Quindy can, but I always assume technical problems rather than assuming everything is fine. Hi. Yes, she's very kissy kitty. She cleans everything. She cleans the wall sometimes, which is unnecessary. Right? Are you silly? You're a little bit silly. So Kickstarters, it's an interesting time here on the Reaper shows, because I'm sure we have people that are, old hands with Reaper Kickstarters, and all they want to see is new stuff. And then we may have people who this might be their first Kickstarter ever, never mind first Reaper Kickstarter. And then I'm sure there are people out there, whether they're lurking or they watch the shows later, video on demand, who really don't care about the Kickstarter at all and just kind of want to know about regular Reaper stuff or just how to paint or whatever. So I'm going to do a show that satisfies no one. No. Well, I mean, that's what they say when you try to make everyone happy, you make no one happy. But I'm going to talk about some stuff that's kind of Kickstarter related, but also just general bones, plastic miniature type stuff. Talk about some paint colors. I don't know if I'll end up painting. We'll see how things go. There might be some little things that I'm going to paint, or maybe I'll just set up to paint those on another. I certainly can't paint right now. She'll put her tail right in the palette because she does that all the time, don't you? Yeah, they can't see yeah, there's the wavy tail. You don't even know what it's doing, do you? She doesn't care. All right, so I will switch to my other view, and we can probably look at things around the kitty. So these are, zoom out a little. So I ordered the packages of the familiars that have been released in Bones USA. And when I got that, I realized that might be an interesting way to talk about the evolution of the Bones plastic. So if you've only seen the white bendy stuff, things have come along, and the smaller figures and even tiny little things like these familiars with detail, those are now much more possible. Yeah, it's a very swishy tail. It's still going. You can't, it's like a pendulum. And I'm pretty sure she doesn't even really know that she's doing it. But I have been a familiar fan for these many years. Where is it? This is my metal bag. This is just wolves. So I organized them all by creature type. So this is wolves and dogs and similar. Oh, yeah, that's a pug. I was going to say it looked like a little pig crept in there, but it's a pug. So I have metal ones. I have a similar bag that's somewhere else. So oh, no, it's right there. You want to go down? Be careful. So I have a similar bag of the Bones Ones one, and I've pulled out some that I have in all of the materials. And I'm very excited to see how much detail they're getting on these Bones USA ones. And the reason I mention this is that these are things you can go buy right now. She's going to pack 2, 3. I have one over here, but I've got them kind of sorted with things, so I'm not going to move them. And then also animal companions. So 4 things just came out that are smaller size or animals. And I love these sometimes you want a companion for your character. You might have a familiar in your game or whatever. But if you're doing more of a display base, or you kind of want to create a forest atmosphere or some stuff, make something spooky, you might add some snakes or something. You want to kind of make a little forest atmosphere. You might add like a crow is sitting off on a tree or something. So I like these for that kind of thing. If you've ever seen any of Michael Proctor's big display bases, look closely, because you'll find at least 1 or 2 little animals like that he's put somewhere. He says if you're working on a bigger base, you have to make everywhere interesting to look at. So if you have less story than the size of your base, you should either bring down the size of your base or add more little elements. And he calls them like little Easter eggs, so that when you might turn something to the back and see a little squirrel poking out of a tree or something. So I got those. I also wanted to show so this was the Bones USA blister pack back, or cardboard. I don't know. I can't remember what they call the cardboard. And then this is it. If you've watched Bones Live, there was an episode where they explained that they were Bones USA is a material, it's not a line. So there were going to be 2 lines that used it, and one of them is Dungeon Dwellers. So now this is the Dungeon Dwellers blister pack. Can I remember what the other one is? No. I don't think I ordered anything from that either, so we'll never know. I'm sure it's online somewhere. All right, what else do I have? Well, let's start with reviewing where I was last week. So I was working on this goblin, which was the last of the 4 figures, or the 5 figures from the promo figures that are, and I think they're still going out. So if you make an order from Reaper, you may receive one of the 5 figures, and I'll show you the other 4 randomly in your package. They've apparently gone to some local game stores have arranged to get them. They gave them out in Adepticon goodie bags. So they're trying to get them out there in various ways, but if you know you're interested in all of them, they're in the core set of the Kickstarter, which is part of the reason why I want to talk about the familiars. I lost my thought there, so I'm coming back to it. I know there are people who aren't very excited about the small things in the Kickstarter, that there's too many just character minis, and why do we care about familiars and stuff like that. And I'm not going to tell you what to like. You know what you like, and I totally get the appeal of the big showstopper dragons and that kind of thing. But the fact that the material has improved so much does make me excited about seeing smaller things in the Kickstarter, because they're usable, smaller things. And speaking of Kickstarter plastic, this one is plastic. I did not receive the original master from Ron on this one, although he believes he sent it to me. So I just painted the one out of my blister pack that I had. So he's Bones Black, and I'll show you one of the others. My copy of this is a resin master. And I still found plenty of detail on him. In fact, I realized later I meant to paint he's got like a little tie on his satchel, and I meant to paint that like a piece of rope or twine or some other color, and I didn't. So hopefully I'll get that painted before the end of the Kickstarter. But so he kind of is on a separate base and doing his own thing, probably running away from these other guys, because this is an organized party of 4 characters. So this is the Elf Wizard. And I apologize to those guys, those of you who have seen this so often before, but unfortunately, because of everything going 3D has a lot of positive aspects, but it does mean that there just isn't stuff to send the painters really at this stage. There will be things, I mean, after the Kickstarter finishes, there will probably be things that we keep painting, right up until the pledge manager closes, so you'll be able to see more things painted. But right now there just isn't that much to send me. So I tried to get new stuff to show you, but alas, there just wasn't anything. So this is the human thief, rogue. Maybe we say rogue. It's more, maybe she's not a steely kind of person. She's just a sneaky, unlocking kind of person. This is the Butts 1000 got the dwarf. I'm going to show her in just a minute. And also I didn't say hi to a lot of people, so hi Kira Nico, Quindy of course, Headstrom, and I'm sure we have lurkers, so hello lurkers, and people who watch later. I still appreciate you, even though I can't talk directly with you. And if you have questions, if you watch a video later and you have questions, feel free to PM me or DM me or whatever they call it in the messenger thing on Twitch, which I may or may not see immediately. At some point I will see. Or if you have suggestions for topics you'd like me to cover or whatever, you get a voice too. But we can't really do what you want if you never tell us what you want. Green users are here. So this is Bob and Julie. They may be interested in my discussion of the familiars, because Julie probably sculpted like 80% of the familiars, if not more. So that's and I love that Bobby made the fighter a halfling. He's super into the diminutive classic races. So this is the dwarf, and now remember what I said. Mine is resin. It's not the same material. So this isn't going to happen with this guy's staff or axe. I don't mind doing that with this guy. I'm not going to do that with any of the resin ones. And this is Ron's. I'm being paid for this. I don't mind doing this. I have faith in my preparation methods, which we talked about last week. So yes, if you're curious about how to get mold lines off bones, some painting tips for how to make paint work better in general, not just on bones, that's some of what we talked about last week. And so she came to me with the hammerhead broken off, and I fixed it, and then it, a stiff breeze touched it, and it broke off again because I have a glue curse. Butts 1000, yes, I agree. Resin minis do stress me out. Well, actually, these are 3D prints, not resin, but it's the same brittle issue. The advantage of them usually is when you get those breaks, they're very clean. So you can usually get it to, go to exactly, like I've had ones where I didn't even have to fix the paint because it would glue back that well. This one, I think the problem is because I've now glued it a couple of times, I'm not sticking resin to resin. I've got some parts where I'm sticking glue to glue, so it's not going to be as strong, and I need to figure out how to scrape down without losing the parts, or I have to accept that I'm just going to sand it down and make it flat and just put it where I want instead of trying to make the break fit exactly. Oh, and if you haven't seen these guys previously, or if you've only received one in your order, their bases are like little puzzle pieces so that you can put them together as an adventuring party. And if you'd like to see pictures of them, because this camera is looking straight down, I can't tip them over to the side or they won't be in formation anymore. But if you'd like to see photos, or you're curious about, like, you love that green spell effect and you want to know what color I used, I've got, so far it's a series of 5 different articles. So the one on the Elf Wizard was the one I most recently posted. So then there's like an overview one, and then one each for each of the characters. And then the one that I'll be putting out in a couple of days is going to talk about the source lighting effects. And I'm thinking about calling it "You Can Paint OSL Better Than Me," because this is not great OSL. I had to make compromises. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that and how you can make OSL better in the article. So if that interests you, keep a lookout for that. All right. So OSL is one of those terms that miniature people start using, and we may forget that people aren't familiar with it. So I think it means on source lighting or something. I'm not even sure what it actually stands for, but what it means is that you are painting, there's a light source on the miniature, and you're trying to paint as if that object is casting light. I think you can see a little better on the wizard. So you can see that the side near his spell effect is lighter, and then the blue cloak or blue coat where it's away from the spell is darker. So that's the idea of OSL, is using paint alone, because another way to do this is to put LEDs in things, which I'm not the person to tell you about how to do it. But OSL I know a lot about. You can also paint, and this sort of comes up with these figures. So this character doesn't have source lighting. He doesn't have a light source on him. But he's posed next to this other character that does. So if I wanted to glue them together on I'm going to put it in the wrong way, sorry. If I wanted to glue them together on a diorama or something, object source lighting, Xanafer says, I would want to extend that spell effect not just on the character holding the torch, but also on him. Even if I had to paint him separately, like, you wouldn't want to glue this together first, because it would be challenging to reach parts with your brush. So I would have to have reference or some other way to figure out where there should be more light on him and less light on him. And that's one of the other things the article is going to talk about. So keep an eye out for that. And maybe, because I got another, where is she? I got another thief when I made the order with all the familiars and stuff. Because I know that Anne's working on the Elf Wizard. So the Reaper show called, and of course I go totally, it's RTB, Reaper Toolbox. That runs in the mornings. I think it starts at 11:30 Reaper time, which is central. And Anne's been working on this. I don't know what she's doing with the light effect. I haven't watched the most recent episodes. But my guess would be that she's doing something. But I could possibly try to do a quickie with this rogue, if that would be interesting at some point. But I figure it might be better to wait and do it after the articles come out, so that you can reference that if you want. So those are the main new miniatures that I have, but I do have one of the Sophies, which coincidentally enough is also a source lighting miniature. So from the front, it's not really super obvious that this is a source lighting miniature. But as I start turning it to the side, you can see some shadowed areas, and then you can see the difference in how the colors on the back are painted. So look at the wings, and then look at the blue and the purple. And then compare those to the colors on the front. They're not the same. Because I'm trying to evoke the idea that it's moonlight is the only thing lighting behind her, and then this street lamp, which sadly is not in the Kickstarter yet. I'm going to suggest to Ron that if they do Green Griffin extras, that they maybe put that in, because it'd be reasonable for an inn to have these. I mean, in this world, it's probably gaslit, but they used to light those with candles. Well, they used to have similar things that they lit with candles, I think, as well. So, Triniko says that Anne has not started the spell effect yet. Is she painting in preparation for the spell effect? Like, is she painting the clothes and stuff as if the spell effect were happening? So this is one of my favorite Sophies. So if you're not that familiar with Reaper, Sophie the Succubus is kind of their mascot. And she's not necessarily just a soul-sucking succubus. Not that she never does that. But she's a very whimsical, playful character. So she will dress up in different costumes to infiltrate parties and just have fun and whatnot. So every year at ReaperCon, there's a different theme and there's a new Sophie. And I think this was actually before we kind of had the themes as part of the event. So it used to be that there was a different Sophie, but the ReaperCon wasn't decorated to go with the theme, and there weren't costume contests. This is kind of be my version of Ed's Old Ass Stories, I think, this episode. So I started painting miniatures in 2003, which I bet there are people in the comments right now or who are watching the stream later that have been painting way longer than that. And I was interested to find out the history of the hobby before I got there. But now so it doesn't seem that long to me, but I know that there are people joining this Kickstarter or watching this channel who've maybe only been painting for a year or 6 months or a couple of years. So I'm going to talk about some of this stuff from the past. So ReaperCon used to be held at the Reaper factory. They would just kind of clear off space in various rooms and on the factory floor. They'd suspend operations and move some shelves, and we'd just hang out there. And eventually they started doing decorations and stuff. Maybe we did have for this one. But there was a pirate one there. There was like an adventure one. And that's one of the Sophies that's in the Kickstarter, the one with the whip. I have pictures of Ron dressed up as a certain adventuring archaeologist. But yeah, so it was much, the first, I didn't go to the first ReaperCon. I wanted to, but I couldn't. And I just learned to drive too. So I didn't learn to drive until I was in my 30s. You now also know that secret. Not that it's a secret, exactly. But I was able to go to the second one. And it was, maybe 100 people. Maybe a little more. It's really come a long way over the years. And I've only missed 2. So I went to the second one, and then I missed the third one, and then I've been to everyone since then. Big Apple ST77 is bringing down the room by pointing out that there are people new to the hobby that weren't even born yet in 2003, and yes, I'm very old now. Wow, deep thoughts from Big Apple ST77. So I know some people aren't excited to see the Sophies, but this one and the ballroom masquerade Sophie, she's got the big ball dress, which I'm going to show you. So I painted a bunch of the Sophies, and I've painted some of the other figures that are in the core set, but I don't have them anymore because I painted them for Reaper, so now they're at Reaper. This was long enough ago that there wasn't just one person painted the official Sophie. It was all the artists that were invited would paint the Sophies, and they used to auction them off even and stuff. But that kind of, when I painted this was kind of the last time that happened, and I really loved how this came out. I was very happy with this miniature, and she's still one of my favorites that I've done, even though I think this was 2008. And this is, so I know, I will share another story for people who maybe you've gone to a contest or you posted stuff online and different miniatures than you thought. Butts 1000 chooses not to acknowledge that people were born after 1990. I get that. So maybe you posted stuff online or like at the Reaper Quarterly contest, which if someone in the chat could give a link to that, if you want to get in a contest where you paint a Bones miniature and everyone paints the same one, and then the other thing isn't a contest, so the challenge, the Reaper Challenge League. So if you don't like contests, the Reaper Challenge League is where you want to go because it pushes you to paint, but you're not being judged. Like you don't have to feel like people are assessing your quality and worth and whatnot. I know, Mad Zeke. So I was pleased with so at the time at ReaperCon, the artists were in a separate category because it was just first, second, and third for the medals. There weren't even medals. There were little trophies, I think. I don't know. But at first it was like a classic game convention contest. And there were different categories. So there would be first, second, and third. And Warlord, small figure. And then Warlord, large figure. And then Dark Heavens and stuff like that. But the artists and I think the staff might have had to go in this one too. We're in our own category. So we were competing against each other. And I think I won second or third with this, and I was very pleased with that, considering that I was pretty new to the team at the time of this. If I'm remembering correctly, maybe that was even a different one. But anyway, the follow-up to that story is 5 years ago. There was World Expo in Chicago, which is a show-style contest like the way they do the medals at ReaperCon now, which is really nice. And it really is a world con. So they do it every 4 years in a different place in the world. So I was very excited to have the opportunity to go see that and participate in it. And I had 4 miniatures picked out, and I talked to some friends, and they're like, why don't you throw a fifth in? Odd numbers are more interesting. And I like this one, so I'll grab this one. So I did not even intend to enter this one as part of my display. And I had that big frost giantess that I painted, if you've seen that, and that's like a very detailed resin miniature that I like just lavished freehand all over. It's a newer thing that I've painted, so you would think my skill level was a bit better. And I had some other stuff too. I had one of the Rockies and some other things, and this is what the judges chose to award. And I did feel kind of weird about that. I'm like, are you saying that something from 2008 that I painted is better than anything I've painted? And now I can't remember. 5 years ago would be 2018. Let's say 2018. I don't know. But so you're saying 10 years didn't make any difference. But that's not necessarily true. That's me looking at it that way. So if you've ever had that experience where you posted something that you feel like you did really well on, but everyone else is excited about this other thing that you painted, you just may have been using more skill than you realized in painting that other thing. It didn't feel hard because you were using skills you're good at, where the one that feels hard is because you're pushing your skills and maybe you haven't mastered them yet. Big Apple SD77 says the Sophies in the core are all Sophies I don't have, so bully for me. But I would also say if you're someone who doesn't see the point of this, if you pop these wings off, and this is why I have extra copies of this one and the ballroom one, that's just a person in a fancy dress. That can be, especially the other figure, that can just be a princess or a noblewoman or the queen or whatever. If you don't add on the wings and you just fill in that little hole in the back, that's just a person. All right, so that's that, Sophie. But since I'm kind of in the olden days thing, I'm going to switch over. So we're going to try my slideshow again. The last time I tried, it crashed the stream. My husband and I tested on my personal stream yesterday, and everything went fine. But the one variable we couldn't duplicate was, going through Reaper's streaming process and then having the larger audience. So if I disappear, I will come right back. Oh, nope, don't ignore that. That's me pressing the wrong button. All right. So far, so good, I think. So this is the same figure I was just showing you, but I went through to search for all the things that are in the Kickstarter that I've painted. And then you're probably getting a slightly different view of this than through the camera, because as much as I've tried to improve the quality in my camera, I've only been able to do so much. So this is one of several other figures that were also special edition, which were for Reaper's, I want to say 25th anniversary. So these were released for 1 month in metal. So yes, these have been out before, but if you weren't painting then, you didn't get one. So I think it's great that they're going to be available in plastic and a more easily workable material for people. It maintains the collectability for the people who bought the original stuff, but gives people who didn't have the opportunity to have these an opportunity to have them, because a lot of them are great figures. And this is a Sandris Nightbloom, I think. I think I just wrote her down as July miniature, because sometimes that's all I know. And, oh, Julie, did you or Bob do this one? I want to say Bob, but I'm not 100% sure. And I think, did Bob do the Bourbon Street Sophie as well? I'm misremembering now. So there is an article on, I think I have a couple of articles that include stuff about freehand, because one's about one of the Sophies that I'm going to show you, and then one's about this figure. And this is one of the pictures from the article where I talk about how I was trying to work out how to do that pattern. Because I was using a picture from a video game, actually, cloth pattern. And I wanted to make it look stitched, not like embroidered or painted on or whatever. So I had to break up the strokes a little, not make them really defined stripes. Green Users confirms Bob. No time for bolt. Rhonda, is your preference to paint from shadow to highlight to shadow, or mid-tone up to highlight and down to shadow? My personal preference most of the time is to start with the mid-tone, then paint in the shadow, then paint in the highlight. It is, I've been practicing at starting with the darkest shadow and working up from there. It's a little faster. It's also a little faster to paint all the highlights and then work on shadows, because there's a lot of times when you can cross-pollinate the shadows between areas. So you're going to save time if you are like, oh, I can use this purple here and I can use it here. I don't have to mix up different things. But particularly when I was first starting to paint and trying to make things look 3D, I found starting at the middle and then working on the shadows. The shadows are what gives things form. That's what they call 3D shapes in the art world. I found that helpful to visualizing that. It can also be helpful from the point of view, like, okay, if you look at this cloak and you see how deep those ridges are, if I paint the highlights first and then I try to paint the shadows, I'm more likely to get, paint where I don't want it and have to do cleanup. So sometimes I make the consideration based on that. If things are inset, I will usually paint them from dark up, because then I'm not trying to get back in past stuff I've already painted. This is Tara the Silent. This is one of many versions of Tara the Silent, actually. She's a recurring character in the Reaper timeline. And this is one of the miniatures that I painted that people like best, although I think there's a lot wrong with it, which is interesting. So that happens to everyone, that people will like stuff you don't think they should like, and they don't like things you do think they should like. That happens to all of us. I mean, I get why people like it, that the freehand is cool and everything. And let me actually just go back to the back for a minute. If you were here for some of the episodes where I was trying out the dry brush brushes, I think it'd be interesting. I was going to try to find my metal copies of these, because I have extras. I think I have extras of all of the anniversary miniatures, or at least most of them. But we did a whole renovation thing, and those were boxes that got packed like before the renovation thing. So I may still do this for next week, but the stippling brushes that I looked at in the dry brushing thing, and you'll be able to find that episode on Reaper's YouTube channel. Just look in the Beyond the Kit playlist, and then if you go on my blog, there's an article of dry brush tests or something where I have pictures of the final versions and I show you all the brushes and stuff. But the stippling type brushes would be a quick way to do kind of the tabletop version of this back of the cloak, which I did the hard way with using a tiny brush and making every single little dot. So you don't have to be insane to get a cool effect like that. Now, there is no shortcut to that cloak that I know of. There's transfers. which I don't actually know how to use transfers, but there's a solution you can use. I understand the concept. I've just never really done it. So if you look for like transfers for miniatures, and I think you can even get paper that you can print your own transfers on your printer and then use it on your figures. But I have not really explored that because I spend my time trying to do it the hard way. Maybe I'm dumb. This is another one of the anniversary figures that is in the Bones core. So it's Eli Quickknife. And I was trying to paint him up like he's a working thug rogue type character. So he's worn and got lots of scratches and stuff. He doesn't. I think of Tara as kind of like a high end rogue, sort of the one that steals the jewels and stuff. And this guy's down in the street. So I had fun, trying to make his leather armor parts look all raggedy and add some rust and grime. Not a ridiculous amount because, he's a human. He should take care of his stuff. But I think you can see on the chest plates where there's a little bit of grime. So it's like they're older or they're not as well maintained as they should be. Let's see who's up next. This is a photo of a drawing, painting. It is a painting because it's colored in, of Izzy Collier Talon's artwork. So usually Izzy does she usually does like a drawing and painting for the ReaperCon Sophie. Just so, it looks cool on the program and all that kind of stuff, but it's also something for the sculptors to use as a guideline when they are sculpting her. So this is what the artwork looked like. And then this is, again, Izzy Talon Collace. And I think there was a different version of this. So she's in a different pose for the final artwork. She's sitting in a chair. She has a goblet of blood. But this was the concept art that the sculptor had. Which I think was Bob or Julie. And this is the other one that if you take the wings off, this is a perfectly usable character in any fantasy campaign. Well, even, there's a lot of historical things you could probably work that in. I'm sure that royal people still wear completely ridiculous clothes to fancy dress. And then here's the physical version of the figure that you saw the artwork before. And I am blanking on who sculpted this. I want to say Jean for some reason. This one was a little tough to paint because smiling is hard. Characters that are smiling and showing teeth, whether you're drawing or painting miniatures or whatever, it can be a little challenging. You can do it. I'm not saying don't try, but just that was the challenge I found with this one. You could take the wings off of this, but then she's still a girl sitting on a gravestone, so that's a little weird. I don't know if you could also take off the gravestone and then she's sitting and she can be a patron and your Green Griffin in. That might be pushing the plausibility of what you can adjust things to, but I think almost anything can be made game fitting. This could be a statue in the graveyard instead of a person sitting on a gravestone. There are all kinds of wacky statues in a graveyard. Probably because all of these are called Sophie something is why they're not showing up on order. I don't know. I thought I'd usually put the numbers in. There is an article on my blog about painting her, I believe. Do I know what it's called? No, but I think if you put the search term Sophie in, you will narrow it down. Bob Rodolphe was the sculptor. And then, so there's a whole story with the first hair that I painted was originally for Ron. The color scheme is actually based on Ron's request, the brown and the red. And then events transpired and I was like, can I paint you a different one instead? This is also the same time when I was trying to work on more directional lighting. So I was trying to paint the figure with the purple one as if the light was coming from the right side of this photo. So you can see that the right edge, that cloak has a lot more highlighting than the left edge. And it should be more apparent in some of these other views that I'm trying to give you the impression of a lot more light on the dagger side than the other side. And you can see that the other figure doesn't have that. If I could put the two of these together, that would be a really amazing figure. So all the freehandy nonsense of that one, and then the light, attention to light in the other one. That's the ideal, which I never managed to do. Oh, look at Quindy being a superstar and actually finding that post with super vague information of just go type Sophie. This, I think, was Bobby Jackson, even though her cloak is not as huge. And the other guy was Bobby Jackson, too. And then this is just a solo picture. And then her face. And then we come back around in the beginning. And I will stop torturing you with pictures. But what am I going to show you instead? Oh, well, just to go back to these guys for a minute. So I actually painted this one in a completely different way. I did check with Ron. And I said, do you feel like that he has to match the way I painted the adventurers? Because I painted these in a very deliberately kind of smooth. I don't know if I'd call it cartoony exactly, but it's a little on that side. And one of the reasons I wouldn't call it cartoony is that there are people who are doing cell-shaded miniatures or hatch-shaded miniatures that really are doing things that look like they walked out of a comic book. So this isn't that exactly, but it is stylized, I guess. I'm not trying to make it look like a totally realistic thing. It's a stylized excess smoothness approach. And that doesn't fit a goblin as much. So I was like, can I, paint the goblin with real metallics and rough him up and stuff like that? And Ron was fine with that. So, in fact, I should have picked up a different guy because you can't compare the metallics to the non-metallics. But I paint them the same way. Like, if I move it around, this part always stays dark because I put shadow there because I want that part to always look shadowed. So you can apply the same principles to painting metallics as you do to painting non-metallics, and they will look better, and you can have some control over. You can see it on the shield, especially. It's pretty much matte under there. There's so much shadow because I want you to see a lot of light reflection here, and I don't want you to see much light reflection there. So I made sure you couldn't. There's another place where you can see where I put a lot of shadow. I painted in a lot of the nicks and dings. He's not that beat up. That was a choice that I made. If you want to have a goblin that's less beat up, but I did make him orange. If you're new here, the art director of Reaper has very strong feelings about what color goblin should be, and that is orange. And then he even made a remark about how I painted the shirt green when he showed this online. And partly I did that because I am going to, when I'm going to put up the colors I used for him on the blog, and I'm going to say if you prefer a green goblin, just swap the colors I used on the shirt and the colors I used on the skin. But also I had painted the other goblins, which I forgot to grab. They're in this kit, quick paint kit, which is not exactly a learn to paint kit, but it's along those lines. So I painted these guys, and they're with the complementary colors of orange and blue. So I was like, I want to take a break from that. Those are Bones 5 goblins. This is a Bones 6 goblin. So instead I used a color triad, which is green, orange, purple. So the secondary colors are a triad, and you may look at it and go, okay, where's the purple? The purple's in those shadows, and it's a dull purple. So there's some dull purple in his boots and stuff, and then in the shadows. So when you use colors like that in a color scheme, you don't have to use them all super obviously or in equal amount on the miniature. I mean, the green is a very small amount. The orange is the biggest, and then the purple is the smallest, and that's fine. That actually is better to do than not. But so if I'm asked to paint any more Bone 6 goblins, because my guess is there will be more, I will probably continue to use that triad system, but just mix it up in some different ways so that each one looks a little more unique. If you like that color skin, it's the same, I'm pretty sure it's the same recipe. It's very similar, if not, that I used on the Bones 5 goblins, and you're going to be shocked to hear there's an article on that on my blog that has all the colors. And then the quick paint kit is the tabletop version of those. So you can get that from Reaper, and the instructions will give you a quick paint version of the thing that I have on my blog. And I figure I will do these on stream sometime, even though they're small and they won't show up great. And then now to join them, so if we want to talk about things that have come out recently, there are now Cobalt quick paint. So there's some Cobalts. And those I have green, but that's the red-green complementary. So I will probably go through these sometimes. They're very small, so who knows how well they'll show up on stream. But this also shows, because I painted these two with layering and this one with dry brushing. So in each of the sets, the instructions show one character with dry brushing and one character with layering. So this guy is the dry brush, and these two were the layering. So you can kind of use like the same principles and stuff in terms of color selection and where you're putting them and all that. Actually, speaking of new things that came out, let's switch over to paint for a minute, and then we'll talk about paints in the Kickstarter. So these are paints from Kickstarter 5, but they, this month, are released into retail. So if you weren't in Kickstarter 5, you can now get them. So here are the swatches I did on paper of those colors. If you're interested in swatches and why they're a useful thing to do, several of these streams talk about that. And those will be on the Reaper YouTube channel. But I now also put swatches on my bottles. I have found this very helpful. I mean, this is like wet palette level change in my painting, I would say, actually. So it was an enormous task, because I think I have 800 or 900 bottles of paint. But I'm so happy I finally did it. After many years of false starts of making swatches of all my colors, I finally did it, and I'm very happy to have done it. So I just wanted to make sure that in the Kickstarter fever, we didn't lose track of these cool paints that have been coming out. Now, these aren't quite as all-purpose as last month's paints, which were the oxides. Which, if you weren't here for that, I had a show of using these to mix skin tones. So if you want a small set of paints that you want to have to work on your lunch break, or because you travel when you work and you need to keep your kit real small, or maybe you just have a small amount of space at home, these are 3 colors that I would put in my set, because you can mix leather and skin and all kinds of colors from these. These I probably wouldn't put in my super small travel set, but they are still cool colors if you're like me and you want to have 800 bottles of paint, or maybe even just 200. So then there is a paint set you can buy on the Kickstarter right now, and that is called Painter's Picks. And that is called Painter's Picks because myself and some other painters picked them. I know, it's so weird how these things happen. Ron's like, what do you want to call it? And I'm like, why don't we call it Painter's Picks? Why is this even a question? I'm kidding. So I thought maybe it would be fun if I show you some of the paints and talk about some of the paints. I did not put them in numerical order. I'll probably do this again after the Kickstarter fulfillment, but I'm going to start with this one because there's an old ass story to go with this one. So this is Shield Brown, and you're probably looking at that going, man, that looks boring. And it in fact does look boring. So back in the day, Reaper paint came like this. I'll show you this one. And this may even be the second series, I'm not sure. So this is called Reaper Pro Paint, and there were 60 bottles of it. And it's a screw top one, of course. This one has long since seen its day. So when I talk about paint film, that's a paint film. And you can see it's actually pretty sturdy in there. It's a little bendy. That's what you want. You want a good sturdy paint film. I mean, not that thick on your miniatures, of course. You're going to lose some detail. But, hold on. Did I make my light go down? But that's what I talk about. With you can't add too much water or other weird stuff, or you lose that integrity. These are probably second edition of Pro Paint, because Pro Paint went away and then it came back, reformulated a little better. But when I started, it was the first bunch of Pro Paint, and this was the last color I bought at my store. So I would go in, I bought the learned paint kits that they had, and then after that was kind of my starting set of colors. And then after that, every time we went to the game store, I would buy 1 or 2 paints. And this was the last color I picked up because I'm like, oh, it's so boring looking. This has now become one of my favorite colors, and I was not the only painter who suggested this when we were putting together the painter's picks. The boringness is its advantage. If you've got a figure where you got a lot of other stuff going on, But you still have to paint some like leather boots or wood floor or something. This is a great color because it's not gonna, fight with the other colors. It's just gonna sit there and be a nice neutral color. So that is what we like about it. But you can add stuff to it to shift it a little if you want as well. No, hold on. I was trying to. I don't know if it's bright enough. If things don't look bright enough, let me know. Well, now maybe it's too bright. My monitor isn't the best. So that's my old ass story about chilled brown. But I do want to just point out something. So this one I showed you is all crusty, and I use these as holders now, actually. Well, I used them as holders at the time. I would just pick a color I wasn't going to do on that miniature. But this one is a paint that I don't even remember when propane got canceled. But this wasn't mine. This was from a paint and take. I know it's not mine because I actually sold my remainders. Queenie knows who I sold them to. The remaining set. I did keep a few. There was a purple that I kept. I have over there. But so I've ignored this paint for many, many, many years. It's fine. I'd have to add some water and do the paint maintenance stuff in another article on my blog, how to maintain your paint, something like that. But it's perfectly usable. So paint can last a long time. Now the difference between this and this is, I don't know, luck in some respects. I do recommend that you check your paint every couple of years at a minimum. Because you can catch that starting to happen and add water, and then it's fine. And when I was doing my swatches, I was doing that on my paint collection because I had actually been a little too long, and I did lose some paints, mainly metallics. I find metallics dry out faster for what reason, I don't know. But there it is. So I'm going to get my water and a brush, and we'll swatch out these colors. Maybe I'll zoom in a little for the swatching. So I'm going to start with the... Queenie doesn't know anyone who's obsessed with pro paints. I mean, they're good paint. I know some people who are still sad about losing one of the reds, I think. And they were kind of the precursor to the Bones paints, where the idea is that they were for gamers and stuff. So they were meant to be higher opacity. So I like to thin the paint out a little, and you may have seen that on my bottles. Because the undertone of a paint, the way it looks when it's thinned down, can sometimes be quite different than the way it looks. Like maybe that one. Maybe you can see there's a little more brown in it. I don't know if I have any good examples with me. But we'll find out. We'll find out as we do these paints. I got some bubbles, but fine. So that's shield brown. That's kind of the color we use when we want a brown that doesn't fight with things. And I do use it a lot. If you're into the triad system, driftwood brown and I can't remember there's a highlight and a shadow that go with it, and those are great colors too, and they do work really well as the highlight and shadow for it, and I use those as well, but I use shield brown the most for sure. So another color that we were kind of looking at, not colors that this is my favorite green or whatever, it was colors that we use a lot, that we find very useful. And yellow mold is another one that you may be like, ooh, that looks, why do we care? How often do I paint mode? Daka Flocka Flame lucked out and got the discontinued HD series for $1 each. Yeah, concrete gray is a great color that I'm sad that we have lost, but maybe we'll have something similar. So this color, I don't use white a lot for mixing highlights. I like something with a little bit of yellow in it. It keeps it a little warmer. It keeps the color you're mixing with a little more saturated. I like to use white like sometimes for very bright highlights for non-metallic metal or some shiny silk or something like that. But for mixing highlights, I don't want to mix with white if I can avoid it. So this is kind of my go-to instead of white. Now linen white, actually I fired linen white from my immediate use, I think. Oh no, I didn't. Here we go. So linen white has a little bit of yellow in it, and it works a little bit like that. But when yellow mold came out, it was even more like that, and I like it better. What's 1000? I've got a dried out ball of concrete gray from Bones 2 that I've been trying to revive. I backed, but I didn't start painting until this year. Kirinico Panic Bach 5 bottles of Griffin Tan because I use it for everything. Yeah, I like Griffin Tan a lot too. Butts 1000. Maybe Quindy can find it for you, but you can look at my article about reviving paint, and it should help you figure out whether or not your paint can be revived and what to do. I think there's even a couple of videos that are attached to the article, but I try to take really good pictures of the kinds of problems you will have with paint and whether and how those problems are solvable. So that's why yellow mold is here. We're probably rarely going to paint anything yellow mold, but it's a great color to add in for highlights. And you are also only getting my point of view. So if you watch Michael Proctor's show tomorrow, if you watch Crow's Nest tomorrow, you could ask him about these colors and why he likes them. Or there may be other opportunities to ask him at events and whatnot. Because I think that Michael actually picked this one, although I certainly endorse this. For whatever reason, khaki greens have been singled out in the paint cancellation moments. And they're just so useful that I don't understand it, because it's the kind of thing you would use on military uniforms if you're painting more modern characters. But it's also great for like swampy vegetation, grimy. I mean, it's called gutter grime. It's good for grime. I think I used it on this guy, because I'm pretty sure I put it away and then I got it right back out again. So I think that's part of the green that's in his shirt. So that's why we like that, because it's kind of an all-purpose color. And then speaking of goblins, goblin skin is also in here. And I think this one was also Michael's suggestion. Like, obviously I've used this a bunch because Ron keeps making me paint goblins for some reason. And he keeps making me paint them orange. Believe me, I ask him if he'll let me paint one green now and then. I know some of you would prefer to see a green goblin, but he has taken a very firm stance on this. So I don't use it a lot apart from that, but it is useful. Like I think I did use it some on that very goblin for the rust. So it works well for rust effects and stuff. And if I'm going to paint clothing or something like that, orange or scales or something, I'm not going to use orange. I'm going to use an orange like this. I don't think a lot of things in nature or everyday life, dyes up until the Victorian era. It was hard to get that orange. Right, while we're in like the oranges and the yellows and stuff, I will also grab Palomino Gold. And this one was one of my suggestions, although other people like it too. And this is, again, a utility color. I very rarely paint things yellow. Yellow is not my favorite color. I should probably practice a little more and paint things yellow. So I should grab something and just paint it that color, just to force myself to practice with colors I don't like as much, because I think that's good to do now and then. So why would I put yellow in if I don't like yellow? Well, again, it's kind of like the oxide yellow that I was talking about. It's earth yellow. So it's a little easier to work with. It's not as transparent, but I like it. So when I paint non-metallic metal gold, I don't use a lot of yellow. I used to like chestnut brown a lot. I feel like there's a Griffin something brown that's a similar color. I use chestnut gold kind of as my starting point, and then chestnut brown was like the reddish color in the shadows, or I might do a greenish color in the shadows. It depends on what the rest of the character has going on. Orange Goblin would be a terrible Spider-Man villain. I agree. You'd see him coming, that's for sure. But this is the yellow part of my non-metallic metal. So it's kind of in the lighter section, it's my overtly yellow part. Or if I paint non-metallic metal and it's too cold, then I'll get Saffron Sunset and use that as a wash, and the same thing with blonde hair. I've used Saffron Sunset as a wash or a glaze. Saffron Sunset was already in a Kickstarter. So this is, you would think that, okay, this is the 6th Kickstarter now, but Reaper has a lot of paint. So every Kickstarter there are, since the first one, so this is from 2 through 6, there are 12 colors that already exist in the line in the package, and that's what this is. So these are 12 existing colors. If you don't want to wait until the Kickstarter, you can run out and buy any one of these now. And then later in the Kickstarter, I'm virtually certain will be revealed 12 new colors. And you would think that given the number of paints Reaper makes, it wouldn't be that hard to find 12 existing colors to put in the Kickstarter that haven't already been in a Kickstarter. It was kind of tough for us because we were trying to base it on colors we use a lot, and then you think about how many have been in, because it's really 24 colors. It's 24 colors for every Kickstarter, because something's already been in Kickstarter if it's the new color from the Kickstarter too. So, which I think Yellow Mold was maybe 1 year. No, it wasn't, because I would have eliminated. That's right, I did screw up one, but I would have eliminated it being Kickstarter. But it ended up being a challenge. It was like everybody was naming all these paints, and then I was going over the Kickstarters looking and going, nope, can't have that one, can't have that one, can't have that one. This is Succubus Kiss, which is another one that Michael Proctor raves about. I like it too. It's a darker magenta, darker red, so it's great in shadows, but this is also, if you want a character with lipstick, this would be a good color to use instead of like a more natural lip. And then you just add a little bit of the skin color to make the highlight reflection dot. Great for, you know, you want like rich silk or velvet clothing, that kind of color is good. If you want like a magic-y color, but you don't want to go right into like the purpley magenta kind of thing like this guy's cloak, this would be kind of an alternative to consider. And then after I finish these swatches, I have to remember to put this somewhere. People who had experienced me doing swatches before will remember that I sometimes put the wet thing somewhere and then put something else on top of it, or put my arm in it or something, because then I'll try to show you again at the end of the show so that you can see the way the colors dry. I mean, the parts that are watered down dry pretty quickly, but the other parts can take a little longer. Then we have Ghost Fire, which is similar to this. If I have, you know, a blue or a green or something, I definitely don't want to add white to that unless I want it to dull down and look really flat, you know, grayer instead of bluer or greener. So if I have a green or a blue that I want to shift the color a little, this is a great highlight for that in a similar way. It's also creepy, so if you're doing ghost stuff, or you know, like oozes or radioactive goo, stuff like that. I think Michael said he also uses it in some way on his metals, like to add reflections or just add interest in the highlights and stuff, but I don't 100% remember for sure now. There are blurbs. I don't know what Ron plans to do with the blurbs, but we wrote up some kind of, here's what we do with these colors information. So hopefully that will go into an update at some point. And then this is Spectral Glow, is a blue that's kind of a similar idea, where it's nicer to use for highlighting than adding white to your blue. I wonder if I have blue and I could do that and kind of show you the difference. I'm just going to move that out of the way. Just a piece of index card I like to have handy for the show. So this is Dragon Blue, which is in the Lorna Paint Kits. This is Pure White, which is also in the Lorna Paint Kit. The first one. Core scales, I should say. I don't consider them, you know, 1 and 2 in terms of chapter number order. It's just, to me, it's the order I wrote them in. So you can see how that blue is getting duller and duller as I add more white. It's turning into like a baby blue or something like that. Now this isn't going to be as light, but I could then add the white from here if I wanted to go right up to a lighter color, because I'm doing like shiny silk corset or something. stays more vibrant. And then let's add the white in the end of that, so we have a similar color range. Now you can use this. This blue is a little bit more teal. You might not want to use it with dragon blue, but you can get some interesting stuff with that too, where you shift your colors a little in your shadows or in your highlights. That's a lot of what, when you admire people's painting, that's a lot of the kind of thing they're doing. They're not just mixing in white, or they're not just using this version of that color to highlight it. They may be doing little things like this. Where is my safe place? Mistakes were made. All right. Go back to the swatches. And likewise, this is also a spooky color. But I don't know that I'd use it for radioactive things the way the green is, but it's great for like ghosts or eerie glows in the distance, that kind of thing. So, oh, I didn't actually make a swatch of it. I like to not have that little bubble on my paints when I close them up. I think this is clear, and I'm not 100% sure that my evidence supports this yet, but I think if I can keep that clear, I can keep the paint will often clog up here. So a person who is having problems with your paint, pop this off and check, because sometimes the bottle is fine and it's just up here, there's like a plug of paint that, and because it's separated from the main body, it's going to start to dry out a lot faster. So sometimes it's goopy enough that you can just mix it back in and then add some water. And sometimes you might just discard that part and then mix and add some water to the bottom part. That is possibly fine. I found a lot of goopy like that when I was doing my paint maintenance. I think the thing with making sure the hole is flowing works, but only if the paints stay upright the whole time. So if you travel with them or move them around or just drop them on the ground a lot like I do, that may not work. And we have stone gray, which were very unoriginally. Yes, either of these colors would be great for the will-o'-the-wisps. You can even mix them together and give each of the will-o'-the-wisps a slightly different look. And then kelpies, maybe they could work for like highlights on the kelpies. So Jen Greenwald and I both suggested stone gray, and we both like it for stone. Now I use it for other stuff too. Anyone who's been watching the show for a while knows that I've talked about grays that you use to paint natural things and grays that you do not. And this is a gray that I would use to paint natural things. In fact, I think I didn't have it out to paint this little guy, which I will plug him again in a minute. But, so these wolves, this giant bag of wolves that I have, this is definitely a color I've used in painting them. Now, it's a little bit transparent, particularly when you compare it to, so it's a triad. If you bought it at the store, you could buy it as a triad, and I'm totally blanking on what the two other colors. There's shadowed stone is the shadow. Worn stone maybe is the highlight. Worn stone in particular is very opaque because it's got a lot of white in it. So what I'll often do, particularly with these kind of cobblestone, cut stone bases, Bobby's been making a lot of these lately. In fact, I think there are some on the 25th anniversary figures I was showing earlier. I'll do like really rough blends for my stones and then thin this down a little and go over it, and it corrects it. Or it softens the transitions in the paint, so it's okay that I was like really quick with the base. It probably worked the same way if you did dry brushing and then you did a little wash of this after. So this wouldn't be your wash to like make everything really dark. You'd use the shadowed stone or mix in some black or dark brown into this to do that. But then you can just thin this down a little and work it in really easily to kind of fix transitions on stones. Daka Flocka Flame. I think they also mentioned the will-o'-the-wisp being in translucent plastic. I might have just hallucinated that. And Quindy says that Daka is correct. Big Apple SD77. I'm going to be a weirdo and use mint green and vampire pallor to paint my will-o'-the-wisps. I think those colors would work great. I don't have mint green handy, but vampire pallor is another one of, you know, like I keep the yellow mold, vampire pallor, and I think I do keep linen white over here. So over here is kind of, I have a little section of stuff on my desk that, so I've got black, I've got blue liner, I've got all my primers and drying retarders and all that kind of stuff that I might want to add to paint. And then I have bright colors like the clears, so that if I want to tone something or change something, I've got that handy. But so basically I have like my most commonly used highlight, the colors I use to mix highlights, and the colors I use to mix shades over here. So these are my top 3 colors to mix highlights with. So it's linen white, yellow mold, and vampire pallor. And I know that Michael likes the vampire pallor a lot too. I cannot remember if Jen is also super into that one. Then we have Twilight Blue, which again was a suggestion from multiple of us. And this is also part of a triad. So I think Snow Shadow is the highlight. And Midnight Blue is the Glitch. QW points out that Weathered Stone is the highlight in the triad color. Thank you. Yes, I was wrong. Casmania, yes, Vampire Pallor is a lot like the old Maggot White. So Twilight Blue is in a triad with Snow Shadow and Midnight Blue. And I will use all of them on occasion, but if I have to choose only one, it's going to be Midnight Blue or Twilight Blue. So it's a dull blue, but that's nice for if you've got people with weathered clothing. If I want to do like a blued steel kind of non-metallic metal, I use this a lot. Sometimes I use the whole triad. Sometimes I mix it half and half with grays. It depends on how much blue I want. If you use it straight, it's fairly blue. But this is like kind of my favorite blue steel non-metallic metal look color. But also for if I'm doing really shiny black. So blue black hair or like patent leather. I use that triad and go from black to white with the, you know, mixing points as I need to in between. But if I had to just have one blue, I would use this one and just do more mixing. If you're a regular here, you know I'm like super lazy about mixing. So if they make a paint that is already the color I need, I'm gonna go with that instead of doing a bunch of mixing on my own. But some people love mixing. Some people have limited space, so even if they don't love mixing, they just want the few most useful colors. In general, that's going to be colors that are kind of more in the middle of the color range. So not a super dark color, not a super light color. And then you use colors like the yellow mold and the vampire pallor and that kind of thing. You have some of your highlight mixing colors, and then you have some options for shadow mixing. So like blue liner, brown liner, black. There are some other, I like Nightmare Purple, I think it is a lot for, let me see, because I put it in one of these. So Nightshade Purple. Because I'm trying to avoid doing duplicates in those, but I did duplicate a blue in one of them. It's harder than it seems. Daffod Weird, hello. Because I know people are sometimes just buying the kits for paints and stuff, and so they prefer as few duplicates as possible. Quindy says, Vampire Pallor is in the Groom and Glaive Fast palette. That is a good point, because it is not for sale as a single bottle, unfortunately. Perhaps we will. Well, let's see, it probably will go into sale after Bone 6, because now we put it in this, and then eventually they release the colors. Well, no, because we were putting it in the existing colors. Well, anyway, if you don't want the rest of the Grave and Gloom palette, which is good, I think the Succubus Kiss might be in that one too. I don't remember anymore. Daka Flocka Flame, I struggle with black hair. Yes, so for blue-black, the Twilight's really good. If you want like a softer black, use a skin tone, which is going to seem weird, but use something like... well, Scholar Flesh is a bit pale, but like tan skin, and then go up a little lighter from there if you want. I know that seems weird, but it works. And so now we have 2 metallics. So this is Aged Pewter, which I've always liked as a color, but I haven't actually used that much. So when Michael suggested it, I was like, yeah, I want to try that. So that is actually what I used on him. So here you can see the aged pewter in action. And it's just a little bit different than... So honed steel is kind of what I think of as a default, or this is blade steel. There's honed steel, I think, in the regular line. So you see, it's just a little bluer or a little purer gray, and this is like it has a little bit of brown in it. So I felt it really worked well for that goblin, because his stuff's going to look, you know, it's not made as well, it's not maintained as well. I felt like that helped give it that kind of appearance. But this is something that Michael Proctor uses a lot in his beautiful shaded metallics. Sometimes you get too much water. Yeah, I do this because water gets on the ferrule. This happens to me while I paint actual miniatures as well. So that is one of the suggestions. And then you would use like a lighter... I think I did use polished silver even on that goblin. Use a lighter silver metallic color to highlight. Succubus Kiss is not in the Graven Gloom, so it's probably in the other one. And then, so my bottle is really old, and I decided not to replace it. I just created my own way of doing the same markings that I was using for testing on these, and then I just wrote down the number of what it is. I think the labels have changed. Said you will get one that is much less likely to do this. Big Apple SD's favorite metallic is aged pewter. So there you go. You're getting lots of votes of confidence for aged pewter. If you've overlooked it, it's cooler than you think. And then this would be kind of a starting point for the gold, yellow type metallics. So gold, bronze, copper. I don't know, maybe not copper. And again, this was suggested by Michael Proctor because he's kind of our master of true metallics. Although for the past year or two, he's really been pushing himself to explore non-metallic metal and improve at that. He thought he would finally sit down and do that. So I'm going to put that to the side and let it dry. And then hopefully I will remember at the end of the show. Yeah, it should be dry as we finish up. And hopefully I will remember to come and show you so that you can see. Actually, I'll just leave that while I put stuff away. So that you can see the colors dry a little better. And I will try to also take a scan of that and put it up on my blog or give it to John for the socials or whatever. So, because, you know, I don't know how true color this camera is. Hi, Melander. So while this gives you an idea of these colors, I can take a photograph with a grayscale card that I can color correct a little better. Which again isn't going to be perfect because there's a difference in my monitor and your monitor, and that's a rant I still haven't had that I will have, which is trying to match colors via computer screens. But that's for another day. All right, so what else did I have goodies to show? Oh, well, before I forget this guy, or gal, I don't even know. This is the mini of the month. So if you place an order that's like $40 or more, you will get one of these in your order. I think for every 40. So I think if you do, no, you just get one. I don't remember. I get confused. I think you just get one, but then there's another mini that you can pick for every set amount that you order. You can pick from a selection of like 6 or 8 or something. But that's like an existing one, so I didn't keep mine to show. So this is very adorable. This is Christine Van Patten. And we had a Hair Folk a month or 2 ago, so now that one has a companion. I feel like someone was painting one of these. Xanifer confirms it's one, but you get other models for every 40. Okay. Yes, I think that this guy's great. In fact, why don't I take it out of the package so that you guys can see it better? I had my package opening thing, which honestly, there doesn't seem to be any easy way to make this happen. Not that I found anyway. And PSA for those who are new here, keep these if you have space. I use them for washes. I've organized things. I cut the plastic out and use it for stuff. Among other things, I've cut the plastic out to use as a glue applicator if I need to just get a little bit of glue in between a crevice. But I've also, like, you can use them for cracked windows. I've used it as kind of the underbase to make icicles, or not underbase, like the structure, the armature, like the sculptors would use. So I have a bunch of these things in my house because I use them for various things. I used them a bunch when I was doing all that paint fixing, because I would stir stuff and then put the stir sticks in here. Or I would dole out some paint to check the consistency to make sure that it really was like a usable consistency and I didn't have to water and stuff. So, reduce, reuse, recycle. These are reused things. And then I recycle this part. All right, so let's look a little closer, get the gray background back so that the camera will focus. I think you can see there's some neat stitch detail on the shirt, jerkin. I do not know what rabbit people call their clothes. There's some studs on the belt. Some nice fur texture on the ears. Look at the sword. But that little face is just, I love it. That's a mischievous little face. Fell under the red. Is this our cleaning mini stream? No, I'm talking about, so I was just swatching the paints that are in the Kickstarter, but talking about them, I mean, they're existing colors, so I'm just talking about them as colors too. I showed some of the figures that I've painted that are in the Kickstarter on a slideshow, and I may do that again at the end in case we have people who came a bit later. So I'm talking about Kickstarter stuff, but I'm also trying to talk about it in a way that is useful to people who've been in past Kickstarters or just want to purchase stuff from the Reaper store. It's not necessarily all directly about what's in the Kickstarter. But this, since I placed an order, I just thought I'd show the mini of the month. But then the other thing I wanted to do was talk about the different plastics a bit again. So I love familiars. We're also doing Rhonda's old ass stories. So one of Rhonda's old ass stories was after how I used to buy a little bottle of Pro Paint every time I went to the game store. Our game store would sometimes have this sale, and this is like one of these unbelievable mythical sales. There were reasons they did this that I'm probably not going to get into. But they would have a sale of buy one, get one free. So basically 50% off if you could work the prices right. And like every time they had that sale, I would go buy a package of familiars. Because I love animal companions, critters, all that kind of stuff. So this is why I have bags and bags of these things. And not just from Reaper. I'll get them from anyone who will give me these. I will get them. So there's some little Reaper chickens. But the reason I have these out, and I think there's some in here, is if you were in Original Bones Kickstarter, Bones 1, you may remember that there were familiars. And you may also remember that they weren't necessarily awesome. So they're not terrible. They're decent. But the lovely fur texture that I suspect most of these are, well, some of these are sculpted by Julie. Some of the other ones I have are for sure. But various artists did most of these, I think. But this one I'm pretty sure is Julie. So there's like a surprising amount of detail there on those feathers. But probably not equal to the amount that's in the metal one. But also not equal to the amount that's going to be on the new Bones USA one. Or Bones Black. I mean, this is original Bones formula. It would work if you did Bones Black as well. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to show these. I know people aren't excited about... I'm excited about there being familiars in the core set. I apparently am one of the few, but I saw that little red panda and I'm like, Red Panda, familiars are back. I'm very excited. And then these came out for the retail release and I was even more excited because they're fun to paint. Kids like them, but they're a nice little way to add some color and interest to a figure or a base. I was thinking there was a figure I should have brought over, and then I remembered that she's not terms of service friendly, so it's good that I did not bring her over. And she's not one of these familiars. I don't think that one has come out yet. So I will, if I can figure out what I did with my chopper, I will pop off this bird and try to do better comparison. Now, the problem is we've got one material to another material to another material. So I figure that I will try to put enough paint on that you can tell the difference too. So let's see. So you can see feather detail there, but it's just not as much as what is present here in the original metal. Look at the front. But then Julia Trent is also excited for the familiars, and so is Daka Flocko Fame. That's why you're my people. That's why you're here, right? And Kiriniko says one of my players has already called dibs on the bun for their next PC. Oh, cool. I bet they'll have a lot of fun with that. So you can see that the new material captures that detail so much better. So this is Bones USA. I don't know that the familiars in the Kickstarter are going to come out in Bones USA. If they're not, they're going to be in Bones Black, which there weren't a lot of familiars. Like, I can't do a direct comparison for you, but I did remember that the Kid Heroes have some familiars. So we can kind of just look at general fur quality, that type of thing, on the Bones Black. Now, my guess would be that if they're going to do some minis in Bones USA, that the tiny little things like that are what they're most likely to do. But yeah, the plastic quality is amazing. They've learned so much since they first did this. So this is the Bones Black. And, well, let's get these guys out of the frame and it should focus. Or I can make it focus. Maybe. So you can see that there's more detail on that too. Now they're sculpted in kind of a cartoony way, so it's not gonna have the same kind of detail as Julie trying to make things look like real animals. But it was one of the closest things I could come up with to compare. There's a little bear. He's not super little, but not all of the familiars are super little either. So there's a bear, and we can compare him to this little wolf that is in the Bones USA. But again, he is sculpted in a more cartoony fashion to match the figures. So it's not an amazing comparison. It's just the comparison I came up with. But the other thing I had to compare, I think, was these. So this is like a little tree twig. I guess twig familiar would be more accurate. I mean, where's my buddy Sir Forescale? He's a twig, not a tree. And then these are some kind of wood-based creatures from Bones 5 that are in the Bones Black. So it's not as bendy. So it's still sturdy, but it's not as bendy as this, and it's going to have more detail. So I do think I have some other animals we can do direct comparison with. I'm checking to see if there are more birds, because I think there are more birds. Yes, there's an owl over here in Familiar Pack 2. So that first one I opened was Familiar Pack number 1. Somewhere I have this little snake too, but I'm not sure if he was in the Kickstarter. Let's see who I can find that was. I'm gonna have to, I know I have squirrels here somewhere. I organized all my little dudes. There's the squirrel. So yeah, you know those organizers you can get for like tools and stuff in your shop. I have like one of those sets of drawers, one that's just full of little bits, and there's like a whole, one of the biggest drawers is dedicated to my abundant familiar collection. So there's the metal version, and there's the Bones USA version. I don't know that they made an original Bones version of that guy. They made an original Bones version of this guy. which he even looks kind of smaller than the original ferret or weasel. Wrong thing. I'm trying to take down the white balance a little because the original bones formula is harder to see. So that's that guy. I should have him in metal as well. But do I know where is a different story? It seems like where he should be. Okay, or this is super random because there's cats in here, but I don't know. So that means that the cat, there is a little cat in one of these. Yeah, I was going to try to find the fairy dragon too, but I think there's a big improvement in the fairy dragon. Now, there's in some ways there's more definition in the white one than you can see on the camera, but I can assure you that having painted some of these, like I painted, so I use these ones more, and they may be a bit easier to see, so let's switch over to these. So these are animal companions, not familiars. I mean, same difference to me, but I painted the original metal version of the metal pack of this. So the metal pack was 3 characters. It was, what was it for? It was the bear, the Wolverine, and the hawk for sure. But I don't think these guys were in them. I think these come from some other stuff. So this wolf and this cougar? I'm going to say cougar. Are from other places. But this was the original metal pack. I don't think I have the bear around here. I do have the... So the Wolverine, there's the original Wolverine. And there's just a lot more detail in the fur. And then the hawk. Also no longer has this very annoying mold line that is super, it's a super awkward place to have a mold line. But let me see if I can, if I mix a wash with, let's get that stone gray. If I mix it with sealer, it should stick to the miniature soda. Like originally I thought, well, maybe I'll clean them all and do like base coat them and then do a wash as a comparison. And maybe I should paint familiars next week. I don't know. But for right now, I think I'll just try this and see if we can make the white ones a little more easy to see. Maybe I needed a bit darker of a color. And the great thing is this also means that all the people are getting a higher level of detail as well, of course. But I'm guessing that most people, at least most people who are here, I don't know about most people who are backing the Kickstarter, but most people who are here have probably had, you know, humanoid size miniatures in one or the other of the new materials. So this is also how you do a wash directly on bones. You mix it with brush on sealer instead of water. And then it doesn't do that beating up thing. And I guess just for comparison purpose, I will mix some of this black with a lot of water and show you what the beating up thing is. And then of course it doesn't do it. All right, this wolf is going to do it. I have washed these, so that probably, yeah, you can see how even though the brush is thick, the stroke contracts down because it's beating up. And that's one of the things that annoys people about bones. You just go in with paint that's not thin down, and it's fine. Or you thin it down with that stuff. You can use glaze medium. There's a variety of different things you can use. It doesn't have to be the Reaper brand product. Oh, so there's the detail on the original Bones plastic one, and I'll get my new guy back. So there's more there than you thought, but there's still more. I should do yeah, I did the tail. Look at how much nicer the tail is on the new version. And then I had the metal one, I thought. Dang it, do I not have the metal one? I thought that's why I picked out these birds for this experiment, because I had the metal one. Let me just check my other bag. That is wolves. Well, I don't, but I do have the even smaller ones, so there's my super small bird. I'll do my super small bird here. And just we'll get force go back for a minute to confirm that this is a super small bird. Pixel Cats, I just primed up these ones in the old White Bones formula. The new ones look great. Yes, I'm very pleased, and I'm sure that Julie's even more pleased because they maintain the amazing details of her sculpting so much better. All right, so that is the old little one. Now let me see what I did with the new one. There you go. And there's the new one. So doing dry brushing is going to be a lot more feasible on these. Dry brush and washing. It'll be a lot more feasible. Even the ground has a little more detail. And we haven't been getting new familiars in metal much for a while. So if they can go back to doing, if they can do them in this plastic because it's more financially feasible, then I'm very excited about that. Oh, right. And I picked that one out because I do have the metal version as well, which why don't I give the metal version a little paint to cut down the reflections so we can compare it with the original. I mean, not the original. So there's the metal. And there's the new one. There's nope, not that guy. The original Bones plastic, which was smaller for some reason. A lot of them, it seemed like, why would you make it even smaller in the molding process? But who am I to understand what happens? Let's see if I have any. I'm just going to look at some of those wolves too. So where's... Oh, we have the Wolverine as well. I have the Wolverine in metal. I know I have the wolves in metal. But I thought I had a Wolverine as well. It's just finding them. See how I thought I prepared in advance, but apparently I did not. So let's look for a wolf instead. Yeah, I think I definitely have. Oh, that's a different wolf. That's weird because I remember having a wolf. There we go. And then I will look for that same wolf in metal in my giant bag of wolves. I'm not the only person with a giant bag of wolves, I'm going to guess. Someone tell me I'm not the only person with a giant bag of wolves. But of course I don't have that wolf or something. Is that what's happening here? the little wolf. It's in the new one, but I don't know if I have. It looks like I have. Nope, that's some weird prime dog that I don't even know where it came from. There, that looks like her. Snarly little guy. Alright, so I will put some of the paint on him so we can see the fur detail. Maybe we'll do some face detail too. So that's the metal one. This is the original recipe. I zoom in too far, the window for being in the right place becomes much smaller. And new extra crispy, which I'll go ahead and just put the same paint on just so that it's a very fair comparison. Green has a giant bag of goblins. Well, don't your goblins need wolves to hang out with? Our goblins and wolves like to hang out. So there's the original. You can see his little eyeball and teeth and everything. And this is the original bones recipe, which I think you can see his eyeball. I just have too much paint in there. But I don't think the fur detail comes through as well. And then this is the, okay, I put too much paint on parts of this guy. This is the new Bones USA one, and there's still too much paint in places. It will dry down. I mean, it'll conform to those when it dries. It's just trying to compare things that are wet is maybe not the best move. But, so I'm excited about that. Even the base, there's like more vegetation and stuff, I think. So that also kind of explains the differences in the materials, which we talked a bit last week about how to prep it, and I will try to do a how to prep and get things ready to paint episode at some point. In a little more coherent of a fashion. But so this material is now only used for big things. So big monster type things that don't have these thin spindly parts. It makes them more durable and it makes them less expensive. But for anything that's like a humanoid or a small creature like this, it's going to be either in the Bones USA or in the Bones Black in the current Kickstarter. Because I know people have questions about that. And if you look in the FAQ, it kind of says the same thing. So they don't know exactly which model. Like, can I tell you for sure that the red panda in the Kickstarter is going to be in Bones USA? No, I cannot. But it should be in a material that maintains the detail and stuff. Kerniko agrees that his goblins need wolves. And Pixel Cat thinks I'm not the only person with a giant bag full of wolves, but may just be trying to make me feel better. Now this little cat, I actually have like a couple of painted versions of the metal version of that. I think I have an unpainted one too. I think I've used this cat like 3 or 4 times. I don't know. He just keeps ending up in some of my like little dioramas and stuff. And again, he is bigger now. I think I have the metal version. I definitely have a big bag full of cats. I mean, that's it. If you want a bunch of cats, I think these are from Edna the Cat Lady. So if you want even more cats, if you buy Edna the Cat Lady, I do not know what the SKU number on that is, but I'm pretty confident that her name is Edna. So you should be able to find that on the Reaper store. But you get bonus cats with Edna the Cat Lady. Because she's holding one, and then I think she has a bunch more. So that's the original metal, which seems very shiny for some reason. I wonder if I polished this because I was going to use it, and then I ended up not. Now, there's no fur texture on this. This is like a short hair cat that you wouldn't see a lot of texture. at this scale. And then there's look how tiny this little seated cat is, because Julie is that good. And then I think I had that wolf too. But he's so small that it's going to be hard to find. Well, I can't find him, but I'm pretty impressed with this version. So those are all the familiars I bought, which is all of them, because I always buy all the familiars. I think the birds are dry, so we'll have a second look at those. That's not the same bird. I couldn't find the metal version of this bird, but you can see the feather detail. And where did the bones version of that bird go? My desk is like a disaster zone now. Not that this is completely unrealistic, but I do try to clean it up before the stream. Well, actually, I don't always, my desk doesn't have a lot of miniatures left out on it very often, because once upon a time my cat chewed on a miniature and that cured me from leaving stuff out on my desk. But I swear we had the original bones version of that guy. Now I can't find it. Dagnabbit. All right. Hopefully the wolves are close enough to compare a little better now. So that's the metal versus the original bones. That's the metal versus the Bones USA. Nico has a quote from Taylor Swift: "It is a daily struggle not to get more cats." Yes. Yes, it is. But then my cats will do something exhausting, and I'll be like, okay, this is enough cats. We tend to have high maintenance pets. They're very, like I can't do anything for myself. Do it for me. Those kind of pets. All right, speaking of dry, I think the paints are dry enough, and I had taken the exposure down a little so that we could see the white original bones better. But there's what the dried versions of so these are the painter picks colors. These are all colors that already exist in the Kickstarter. There will be new colors. I mean, unless we don't unlock stuff. But assuming we keep unlocking stuff, there will be new colors. And then these two are metallics. So that's aged pewter and, how if I forget, old bronze? Is it just old bronze? Yes, old bronze. So I'm going to show the slideshow again for people who came later. Well, I'll show the goblin first. If you missed him, I did finish the goblin from that set. I painted him in a totally different style. I will have the colors up at some point. Big Apple ST77. As long as you have more minis than cat, it's not a problem. I definitely want more minis than cats. Oh my goodness. Even more weight of minis than weight of cats. Even on a pure weight basis instead of numerically. So, and this is the real material. So this is the Bones Black. Whereas the set of adventurers I painted are 3D resin prints. But this is the same thing you'll be getting. I'm not sure he's unlocked in the Kickstarter yet. I think he's in an expansion as yet to come. The other four that if you've been here before, you've seen a few times, but I'll briefly show them again. These ones are in the Kickstarter in the core set with the puzzle bases. Probably zoom back in on him. That's the wizard. And if you'd like to see a version of him painted, Anne is working on him right now. And that's at 11:30 Reaper time, 11:30 Central, which I think she's doing him, working on him every day. Usually she does a different miniature, like, so I think Mondays are the same one, and then Tuesdays and Wednesdays are the same miniature, but she has 5 different ones during the week. And so that's why this is broken. Resin print, not consumer version. But I believe she might be working on the wizard every day. I don't know. Maybe Quindy can confirm or refute that statement. Kiriniko, my life has always contained 1d4 cats. I wouldn't be without the little psychos. Yeah, 1d4 is probably pretty good. I don't know, 3 just seemed like so many more than 2. It was like more than twice as many as 2. It's cat math. It's different. Right, I did have one more physical thing I can show you. This is one of the Sophies that is in the Kickstarter. The lantern isn't included in the Kickstarter. I'm going to suggest to Ron that if there ends up being a Green Griffin Extras or something like that, that they put the lantern in there, because I think the lantern's pretty cool. So this is painted with a source light effect, as were some of the miniatures that I just showed you. And I will have an article coming out in the next few days where, some of you asked me to spill my secrets. I'm actually going to spill some secrets. I feel kind of weird about it. I'm like, should I be revealing this much, or is this stuff that I should save for paid classes? But I've already written the darn thing now, so it's going to be going up. And then you will be able to paint a version of this that has better OSL than I did, because this is not amazing. The Sophie's better, but this is not amazing. All right, so the slideshow finally worked, and it didn't crash anything, but just in case, if I disappear, I will come back in a minute. All right, so far so good. So this is the same figure you just saw, but pictures of it, which, I mean, one of the secrets of OSLs, that's secret with air quotes, is take pictures on a black background. It's going to look a lot more effective. And that's somewhat true of other miniatures, but it can be tricky to take pictures on a black background. So using a medium gray or a slightly lighter gray, like what I use to put on my desk when I'm showing you miniatures on the stream, that's going to be an easier way to take pictures. So white is tough and black is tough. Nico, I'm not necessarily talking about quality of painting, because I think one of the things that's really interesting about source lighting is it has nothing to do with good blending or fancy brushwork or any of that. You could take the principles, like it's all principles of how you use color. You can take those principles and apply them to a tabletop mini that you paint in a couple of hours and have an amazing light effect. Is the miniature going to be like a contest-winning miniature? No, but it could have a better light effect than the one I just showed you, if you kind of do the things. This is a Sandra's Nightbloom. She was one of the 25th anniversary, Reaper's 25th anniversary figures. So these were only available to buy in metal for a month, but now they're coming out in the core set, and will be available in Bones, either Bones Black or Bones USA. And I believe Bob sculpted her, and he had in mind kind of a person who lives in Bree, Lord of the Rings type thing. So I was trying to find like colors and textures that matched that idea. So I actually took the pattern on the outfit is from a character or screenshot I got off and I've played this game actually, Lord of the Rings Online. So it was inspired by that, and there's somewhere on my blog is an article that includes this picture that talks about figuring out freehand and things you can do to make freehand a little easier. Pixel Cats, I agree. She looks like an ordinary person. And like an interesting ordinary person. So in this case, I was trying to figure out how to make the pattern look woven instead of embroidered or added on, because I hadn't really done a lot of that. This is one version of Terra the Silent. It's again one of the 25th anniversary figures. And I mentioned this to the people who saw the slideshow previously. I apologize. But if you've watched the episode where I was testing out different dry brushes, and there were those ones that did stippling really well, you could do the fast version of this cloak with one of those brushes. And in fact, if I can find, I'm pretty sure I have another couple of metal copies of her. If I can find one, it might be interesting to try that on stream. So that, but I did this one the hard way, which is tiny brush and 1,000,000 stipples. And the color scheme, like red and brown, is or dull red, especially, and brown. It's not the first thing I would have thought of, but Juan had a photo that he showed me, so that was what he wanted for the color scheme. And then there is no cheat mode for that kind of freehand. There's no cheat mode, sorry. I wish there were. I'd do more of it. That was just, I've actually always been kind of nervous about doing freehand like that, designs and pictures and stuff. So this was just a miniature where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I actually started, like I did that part, I think, before I painted the, maybe I painted the boots or something, but I think I did that part before I painted the rest so that I wouldn't lose my nerve. And it took totally a long time. This miniature took a long time to paint. It ended up getting auctioned off for charity, not auctioned off, raffled off for charity last year. And I'm happy it worked. I was supposed to be sold at some point, so it didn't go to Reaper, and then it was supposed to be sold, and then I still had it when Nova Charities asked me about contributing something to their very worthy raffle series. So, and I think it did pretty well, because that's, even though I think there are flaws with that miniature, that is one of the ones that I've done that a lot of people really like. This is Eli Quickknife, who is another one of the 25th anniversary miniatures and is included in the core set. He's a more rough and tumble type of rogue, so I painted him with, scratched up leather and dingier armor. With Tara, so my philosophy for why she was a thief with that, the fancy thing is on the inside of her cloak. So she can wrap that around her and blend in the shadows and stuff, but she works hard for the money. She's going to buy nice things, was kind of my philosophy when I was painting Tara. This is concept art, and then it also gets used as decorative art for one of the Reaper conventions, the Reaper cons. Do I remember what year? No. No, I do not. But in a minute, you'll see this figure. They ended up not in order because there's a bunch of things called Sophie, and the folder's just in alphabetical order. This is the concept art and the green for another ReaperCon Sophie, which I believe was 2018. Then the art that got used at the convention is a different version of this figure where she's sitting down. There's also an article on how I painted her, and then I think I might have used some of because there's stuff on her bodice. It's not in these pictures, but you'll see it in the painted version. There's more about freehand in an article that includes that figure. This is the cemetery one, the painted version. So the 3D painted version of the cemetery one, where I'm trying to match the colors that you saw in the artwork previously, which can be an interesting challenge. And then this is the 2018. Now this one, if you take the wings off and you fill that little cavity, so if you're someone who doesn't think she's a very good succubus, because I've been hearing some complaints about that, when people are talking about what they don't like about the core set, she doesn't have to be a succubus. She can just be a noble person. And the same is true with the one with the lamppost. If you don't put the wings on, or I mean, maybe they'll come glued, but you can chop that stuff off pretty easily. There she is from the front. So I don't know if you can just kind of see that on the bodice plates or panels, there's some freehand, and that was a pattern. Well, it was a simplification of a pattern that was drawn on the concept art. So that sometimes when we're trying to do freehand, we're trying to do too much. I do too, Valender. She's very cool. But she's in the core set. So if you're getting a core set, you will have one of her. But I believe so if you're someone who likes metal, I believe that all of the Sophies I've shown you are now available on the website in metal, where that was not true for a really long time. There would be special events every now and then where you could buy the back catalog. But I mean, some of us used to do a lot of things to make sure we got all our Sophies. Bob Rodolphe sculpted this one. And did a lovely job. And I had fun painting it. And then since I didn't give the first Terra I did to Reaper, I had to paint a different one for Ron because they have all the figures in their collection. And I painted this purple version, but this was right around the same time where I was kind of, I'm always trying to learn something new and push my craft, as I'm sure most of you are as well. And in this case, I was working on lighting. So where the brown Terra had just kind of very general lighting from above, I wanted to work on directional light and really adding a little more drama and effect with light. So if you imagine the light is coming from the side with the dagger, because that side's going to move around. And so it's a little more obvious here. You can see there's that really bright highlight on the top edge of her cloak, and then the bottom edge. You can see how the leg on the right looks lighter than the leg on the left. That's not because of how I took the picture. It's painted to look that way because you're not seeing that same thing on the brown one. And if I'd done that on top of the brown one, then that would have been a showstopper mini. It's rule 17 of Reaper. If Bob or Julie sculpted it, you will want to paint it, says Valander, and I 100% agree. And then these are just the solo pictures of this one. And then we're back to the original Sophie. And we're just about at time, which is probably good because apparently my throat is doing that thing. So as we leave, I will remind people I didn't get to finish the bird up. So I got to finish the goblin. I didn't get to finish the bird. This is Kobzar Solo Vaco. Do I have a blister pack? Yes. The proceeds, $7.50 from each sale of this miniature, is going to UNICEF to aid children in the Ukraine. So if you'd like a cool miniature and to help with humanitarian aid to the Ukraine, I suggest getting one of these guys. And I definitely want to finish him up and then see if I can auction him off or something to further give proceeds to charity. So I just want to get a little plug in for him. I think Ed is going to announce the 2 weeks total coming up on Reaper Live. So if you want to help make that a great number, go buy some of these. But let's see if I missed anything in chat. What I like about these is how the noses look different enough to look like different ethnicities. Excuse me. So hopefully that was remotely interesting. I don't know if that was boring because it was just me talking. I didn't paint a lot. I will try to do painting next week. Maybe we'll do some quickie OSL or something to go with my article. I don't know, but I'll figure something else out. I don't know if I'll have any cool new things to show you, but I will try. I tried. I did try to get you some stuff, but there just wasn't anything they needed for other stuff. It's not. Painters are kind of at the bottom of the who gets stuff list. But thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I hope I wasn't too boring to listen to today. I hope you got to see some things that were kind of interesting. Valander's got the Kobzar on the way, so that's good. And I guess I'll see you next week. I'm pretty sure that Quindy's going to find us a raid. Someone else doing something cool that's probably hobby related or adjacent. Oh, thank you. It sounds like people had a good time. That's good. Oh, Bones update. That's true. You're not going to go on a raid. You're going to get your Bones 6 fix. And there you probably will get to see new stuff that I don't have. So I will sign off and let you get straight to that.